Let me do some workings here. Good morning, caller. Can you hear me?
Morning, Jose. This is Tim Rohr.
Good morning, Tim. Great to hear your voice.
Yeah, thought I'd help you out a little bit with what's going on and some reflections.
Sure thing.
What I've got to say won't be popular, but then maybe that's the problem, right? People are trying to be popular and not saying what needs to be said. But number one, I don't think we should be surprised at the outcome. The abortion report for the last 10 years has consistently shown that local people / Catholics really continue to be the highest demographic for procuring abortions.
Right.
So why wouldn't we now have an abortion queen as a governor?
Right. Oh, just to let everyone know, because I didn't say that because it wasn't confirmed yet, of course, but we do have the most recent results is that the Democratic candidate, who is Lulian Guerrero, has received 50%, 50 point something percent, which I think puts her over the 50+1 as the definition of the winner of the race. So that's what you're referencing, just to make it clear to everybody who's listening, not just on the airways, but through Facebook. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
but you're absolutely right.
Actually, I'm not even referencing the current election. I'm referencing the fact that this is inevitable for Guam. That we have a pro-abortion governor, a pro-abortion legislature. We have a pro-abortion populace.
Yes.
And they're Catholic. If you look at the demographics, you'll see it's Catholic. Okay, so God always gives us what we ask for. In Romans 1, he says he gave them up to the perversion of their ways. You know, we want this. This is why we have it. And so he will let us, punish ourselves, and that's inevitable. The other thing, too, is our society ignores God's order. We joke about our society being matriarchal, but matriarchal is not God's plan. That's a cultural plan, or that's a cultural outcome of men not taking leadership. And so we have prided ourselves, joked about it to some degree about mom and grandma being the, ruler of the house and the last word and whatever. And we have, and that not just Guam, but, generally society has sidelined men. But in our society, we actually celebrate it. And I understand it. I'm from a Latin culture myself, and I understand it. But, should we be surprised, that, people think that a woman can do a better job than a man? Now, in this case, it may be actually true. I mean, I'm not talking about the merit. I'm just saying that if we look at the things that we embrace and we have embraced, we shouldn't be surprised of what turns out. So, but essentially, the fact is that our church, our local church, our leadership, complete wimps when it actually comes to engaging the real problem. And the problem actually isn't abortion. The problem is birth control. When you have the majority of the population living in mortal sin, and then receiving communion on top of that, I'm not taking any polls, but it's just a given. I mean, I've had talks with people, and people think that if you're Catholic, birth control is your own private conscious decision. Well, why wouldn't they think that? When's the last time anybody heard church teaching from the pulpit on birth control? Well, abortion is simply emergency birth control. So it's just an extension. And while we like to focus on abortion, I mean, it's easy because it's so gruesome and ugly and terrible and all that kinds of stuff.
You would think because of that gruesome.
Private lives, we've actually permitted the demons to enter into all this. So abortion is just a natural result of what's gone on.
Right. True. And that's again, it's always amazing and providential that we have readings, gospel of the readings that are determined way before anything in our time occurs, yet is so appropriate and apropos for the day. When the gospel is telling you stop putting everything but God as a priority, this is what's going to happen, and you fall out of grace, and you fall out of that discipleship with God. So when we place the popularity of a candidate, or we place even our jobs, or even when we place fear of losing funding, right, or donations at the helm, then we are putting priorities opposite of God. And that's what happens. We talk about abortion a lot here on the station, and not just this election season and not just this year. It's been something we've been championing for a long time, and that's the dignity of a human as God has called us to do. And you would think on an island that is majority of Catholic, that should be an easy task to overcome.
Well, this is what I want to engage. If you just look at polls nationwide, 33% of Catholics think abortion is okay for any reason. Mm-hmm. So the idea that we can equate Catholic with pro-life is a fallacy, and it's a myth, and it's just been proven. So we have to quit thinking that if you're Catholic, you're going to do this, you're Catholic, you can do that. Because we have a clergy that is completely wimped out. We have a clergy that has put taxes over dead babies. Talk about priorities. You know, I don't want to keep blaming the people. You know, everybody blames us, the people, the laity. You're right about the things and the decisions, but when you're formed, you're formed Sunday after Sunday, to think that you can make up your own mind about these things and that your nonprofit status is more important than killing unborn children and blah, 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 the whole thing. The fact is that this church is suffering because of a clergy that is morally corrupt to a degree that is, I don't even have a word for it, but just to put it this way, the sex abuse scandal in our diocese is 400% larger right now than the scandal in Boston that provoked the movie Spotlight. 400% per capita larger. Okay, on an island that's majority Catholic, and I'll go on. I mean, I don't mind saying this, but in the work I did to expose this, the public has only seen 1% of it. All the stuff that people ask me not to talk about. It's not just the boys that you see out there in the news that are the victims. There's a huge homosexual scandal in our church. It's huge. It's monstrous, and it hasn't even been addressed.
What's interesting, and I don't know if that's going to come to light soon, and hopefully that we do report it, but there is a study that's come out that's beginning to be picked up in mainstream Catholic news service about the correlation between homosexuality and the abuse that's been going on in the church. I don't know if you've heard about it, but I'll send you a link, or I'll post it soon. I know that several clergy have already spoke on it. And if I'm not mistaken, the National Catholic Register has also put an article about this study that just came out.
Archbishop Vigano has already made that point, over 3 times now. He's made the point that this isn't about pedophiles. This is about homosexuals in the priesthood. Homosexuals have been actively recruited, groomed, and supported and promoted, for 50 years now. This is what Vigano is trying to expose, right? So it's certainly nothing new. But in Guam, this is what led to, even back in 2009, 2010, when I was basically standing all alone against Senator B.J. Cruz and his bill to legalize same-sex unions and all that kind of stuff. The opinion polls of Catholics were, they let people marry who they love, right? So we shouldn't be surprised that we have the queen of abortion, probably going to be elected. And as far as I know, I don't know anything about it personally, but I was told that her running mate is pro-gay or personally gay or whatever it happens to be. And we don't want to make this about. I'm not making this about their choices. This is about Guam's choice because of lack of leadership in the clergy. Lack of leadership in the clergy because, for the most part, they're morally compromised. Now, pray for our priests, whatever, but you know what? Praying and not doing anything isn't what Jesus did.
And that's something that I kind of want to talk on, because I hear a lot of, and I see a lot of these postings on social media or people saying, God is still in control. But what does that mean? If we are resigned to just saying God is in control, then what is the point of the sacraments? What is the point of us going towards anything holy if we are just to sit and allow God to do everything for us. Do you understand what I'm saying? What is the response to that?
I was listening to a good talk by Father Ripperger, Chad Ripperger, an excellent priest, teacher. He's an exorcist, and he clarifies what that means. God will take over when you have reached your end. Mm-hmm. When you have done everything within your power and that grace has sufficed you to do, and you can do no more, God takes over. That's when we mean with God's control. But we have used that as a way of cowarding out, of hiding, and so all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Right.
So we've created a church full of wimps, people who just want to say, oh, well, we're just going to pray about it. Okay. Meanwhile, children are being raped at a 400% times the size of the Boston Diocese for 50 years. And now we're crying about it? No, we get the government we deserve. God consistently has done that through Scripture. He's given Israel the kings it wanted. When they rejected him as king, then they demanded an earthly king. And that's what we've done. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to, I'm so sick and tired of hearing that this is somehow the lay people's fault. Yes, we have to take responsibility. But at the very top, we don't have leaders who inspire us to do the right thing. No, instead, we get bulletins from the Chancery about protecting our tax-exempt status. That's right. The leadership of this church. And so, I've decided to go to church, keep my head down, hold my nose, plug my ears sometimes. I'll never leave the church. It'll never drive me into the sin of others. Will never drive me into the sin of leaving my faith. But I'm not surprised about any of this, and in fact, I'm kind of glad, especially since the guys on our side. Let's face it, Jose. Nobody brought up the issue of abortion in this election until you did on KOLG, until you made it an issue about what had happened, right?
Right.
And then Jungle Watch followed suit, mostly with Frenchie's post. It wasn't an issue. Nobody touched it. Did anybody ever bring up the fact that Archbishop Afron was found hiding in January of 2017 in a house owned by the vice president of the Bank of Guam, the San Francisco branch? Right. Anybody bring up the fact that Afron is or was, maybe still is Bank of Guam's best customer? $20 million plus loans. How many bank accounts, school accounts, bank accounts, loans, whatever, of all of our church institutions when the president of Bank of Guam is the foremost proponent of abortion? Anybody ever bring that up? About 6 or 7 years ago, I was on KOLG sitting where you're at when Deacon Tenorio pulled me off the radio because I started talking about Bank of Guam and abortion.
Right. And full disclosure, at the time, there was an underwriting by Bank of Guam on this radio station, which is no longer being played here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's why he pulled me off the radio.
Right.
Didn't want me to talk about Bank of Guam and abortion on the radio because he's cashing a $50,000 check to keep quiet.
Well, I don't know the amount, but I understand what you're saying. My frustrations as well, and one of the reasons that I might cat check for this, or one of the reasons that you're allowed to say the things you are, is because you are a person of the church and a laity and have a right to speak this. There is a frustration not being able to talk about the specifics, and I think we could be able to talk about it. I'm listening to homily after homily of clergy in the States speaking to specifics.
You shouldn't have cat checked for it. You took a phone call like you're supposed to do.
Right.
The Catholics can't call up and voice their opinion on something called Catholic Educational Radio, then why do we have a radio station? Other than to play the things that will make us feel good about ourselves, which is all that radio station did for many years until you finally got involved and tried to actually make it about something.
Well, one of the things that I want to say and to put a forward-moving spin on, not spin, but forward movement on this is to say that one of the things that really brought me and rooted me to the church is not the ambiguity of teaching or the softness of it. It was the directness. It was the firm foundation of the teachings of the church, which I will always repeat and cite and always talk about here. My opinion doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? my opinion can only be formed by what we've been taught, what the church is taught, and I think we have to be very clear on those messages, because when we talk about, I hear a lot of people say, well, abortion is not an issue. There's other issues out there. And what about the issues of this, that, and the other? But the whole notion, and that was a theory. What was it called? The seamless garment theory, where some clergy in the states wanted to say that so they didn't have to talk about abortion at the forefront, right?
It wasn't just some clergy. It was the president of the National Council of Catholic Bishops, Joseph Bernardine, who set the whole tone for that.
Right. And so that notion that everything can be talked about in a moral equivalency is just in error. And thank God for Father Wade Menezes on Sunday. And this happened I don't know if anybody heard that he was almost attacked at the altar while he was doing the consecration, praying over the gifts, and he had given a homily just minutes before, saying that there's a difference between prudential issues that we use our providence in discussing, and then those issues that are non-negotiable. There's no moral equivalency between immigration, healthcare, all those things that we talk about in the government, but we can't say, well, abortion, we can discuss it, and we could be prudent about it in the sense that we can make allowances for any type of death in the womb, right? And so that I think when it comes to the leadership, the clergy, when it comes from the archdiocese, we have to be very clear and not be so ambiguous about things. And I know I'm giving an editorial right now. That's probably what I've been doing for the past couple of weeks anyways. But it's born out of a frustration of not being able to be crystal clear on the teachings of the church, except for my short half hour or hour that I'm here on the radio, or that we're here on the radio. And I want to thank you for calling in and voicing that opinion as well. I think it's something that we do need to hear more of it from not just you, not just me, but from the pulpit, because
that's my point, Jose. I mean, that's the whole point right there, and that's why we get what we deserve, because we have a cowardly clergy. And bottom line, I'm not going to shy away from that.
But what are some of the things?
I found that out in person when I was left. I went and stood up for them, and anyway, we won't go there.
Right. What are some of the things that you would suggest? And I know without how do I frame this? What are some of the things that you would suggest from here? Okay, let me just say this. When I woke up this morning and I saw what results were there, and I've already talked with several people in my inner circles about this days before. And I said, I'm already resigned to accept whatever results there are. And just like you said, I won't leave the church. This is our church. This is the church that I follow, because it's God is at the head, right? Nobody else is at the head. But moving from here, I know that I won't stop talking about this issue, because this is not a political issue for myself, and for the church, it's a moral issue. It's an intrinsic evil, and it's not just abortion. The other things that we have to talk about is same-sex marriage. We have to talk about other things. We have to talk about marriage itself. We have to talk about what our Catholics are doing and how they're being led. Why are the lines to communion so much longer than the line to confession?
Well, where is the confession on Guam? Where can you go to confession, Jose?
It's a good question. I know of two places.
That's why there's no line.
Right. I know of two places only, and
whose fault is that? Yeah. It's not our fault. Yeah. To find a place. I know of one place or two places, maybe at most. Everything else is, you got to track down the priest.
And I know we've talked about this before about making appointments, and we won't go into that. Maybe I'll bring it up another time about confession and what really is in and about of what confession is about, because I don't think it's being promoted as it should be. Not promoted, but you know what I'm talking about.
It's not being made available.
You're right, right.
And it's the actual very first commandment that Jesus gives to his apostles. As soon as he is raised from the dead, okay, rises from the dead, he instructs his apostles, he breathes on them and says, whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you retain. It's the very first thing. That's the whole mission of the priesthood.
Mm-hmm.
To try to find a priest where you can go to confession. Anyway, but last thing, and I'll let you go, is you asked me, what can be done? I'm going to reference Father Chad Ripperger again, Sensus Fidelium on YouTube. Listen to everything that man teaches, because he was addressing this directly. He says, what can you do as a layperson given the corruption in our church? Here's what he said. You ready for this?
Okay.
Stop sinning.
You make it sound so easy.
No, of course it's not easy.
Right.
But that's at the root of everything. Sin is at the root of everything. So for his instruction, us, we're running around with our heads cut off and wondering why we have these problems. And then he said, stop sinning.
Right.
And he goes on he adds stop sinning venially, because a lot of people think as long as they're not committing moral sin, they're okay. No, he just says stop sinning.
Mm-hmm.
Stop sinning. And then he says, spend 15 minutes a day in mental prayer and others. We're not encouraged to do mental prayer. I don't even know if people know what mental prayer is. Even me, after listening to what he said it was, I thought, you know what? I don't do that. Okay, mental prayer, and the mental prayer is where, you're not using words. You're listening to God. 15 minutes of silence, and I'm thinking well, where does a Catholic learn how to be quiet when every spare second when you go to Mass is packed in with somebody talking, somebody narrating, somebody singing? Not a single moment. Not a single moment. You just go to communion, and not a single moment of silence. Where's silence taught in the Catholic Church today? Anyway, that was his advice. I take it myself, just passing on what I heard. But what can we do as Catholics? Stop sinning.
Yep.
Okay.
It's that stark. Thanks a lot, Tim, and appreciate it. I know it's been a while, but hopefully we'll hear from you again.